Your lady-in-waiting just glanced at your letter before you sealed it. Was that innocent curiosity, or is she memorizing the contents to report to someone? Your lady-in-waiting just glanced at your letter before you sealed it. Was that innocent curiosity, or is she memorizing the contents to report to someone? The ambassador who visited yesterday smiled too warmly when he mentioned your beauty. What does he really want? Your father's new wife treats you kindly, but your father's last wife was kind too until she wasn't, until she was headless. That servant who brought your breakfast looked nervous. Did someone pay him to poison your food? You don't know. You can't know. And that's the problem. Welcome to being a Tudor princess, where paranoia isn't mental illness, it's survival strategy. Your mother might have been executed by your father. Your legitimacy might change based on your father's current marriage politics. Your religion might be treason depending on who's currently in power. Everyone around you, servants, advisors, ladies-in-waiting, even family, might be informants, manipulators, or worse. The Tower of London is always there, waiting. Your sister sent people there. Your father sent people there. Someday someone might send you there. Trust no one. Watch everyone. Remember everything. That's not paranoia. That's staying alive. Hey, before we explore this world of justified suspicion, like and subscribe for more historical deep dives into the past as it actually was. Now let's talk about what it means to be paranoid Tudor princess, and why you're absolutely right to be afraid. Watching everyone. Your survival depends on it. You wake up and immediately assess threats. The servant who enters your chamber? Is she the same one as yesterday, or has someone new been placed in your household? New servants mean someone is trying to get closer to you. Same servants mean they've been there long enough to gather information worth reporting. Either way, you're being watched. The question isn't whether you're being watched. The question is who's watching and what they're planning to do with what they see. Your ladies-in-waiting dress you every morning. They see your body, your letters, your reactions to news, everything. Some are genuinely loyal, maybe. Others are placed in your household specifically to spy on you. You can't know which is which. If you trust the wrong person, you could end up in the tower. If you trust no one, you live in constant isolation that might drive you actually insane. There's no good option. So you smile at everyone, confide in no one, and try to remember who said what to whom, because someday that information might save your life. Lady Margaret is particularly attentive this morning. She's helping you dress, making pleasant conversation, asking if you slept well. Is this genuine care, or is she trying to determine if you're worried about something? If you seem worried, she might report that you're anxious, and people will wonder why, and suddenly you're under suspicion for plots you didn't even know existed. So you smile and say you slept perfectly, and you watch her face for any reaction, and you file away the interaction to analyze later when you're alone. Except you're never truly alone because servants are always nearby. The servants themselves are security risks you can't eliminate. You need them. You can't dress yourself in these ridiculous gowns. Can't prepare your own meals in a palace where you're not allowed in kitchens. Can't survive without the infrastructure of service. But every servant has access to something. The one who prepares your food could poison you. The one who handles your correspondence could read your letters. The one who cleans your chamber could search your belongings. You're completely dependent on people you can't fully trust. That's the trap. You've developed habits to manage the risks. You vary which servants you allow to do which tasks, so no one gets too comfortable or builds too complete a picture of your routines. You hide your important letters even though you know a determined spy would find them anyway. You're careful about what you say in front of servants, assuming everything will be repeated. You've learned to have two faces, the public one that's serene and appropriate, and the private one you barely allow yourself to see even in your mirror, because showing real emotion is dangerous. But here's what makes the paranoia exhausting. You're probably right to be suspicious, but you're also probably wrong about specific suspicions. Some of your ladies-in-waiting probably are reporting on you, but which ones? The one who seems most loyal might be the spy. The one who seems suspicious might be genuine. You can't know, so you suspect everyone equally and trust no one fully, and it's psychologically destroying you, but the alternative is being caught off guard when the arrest comes. Princess Elizabeth, during her sister Mary's reign, managed this paranoia brilliantly, or at least well enough to survive. She was constantly under suspicion of Protestant plotting. She was interrogated, imprisoned in the Tower, kept under house arrest with guards watching her constantly. She knew her ladies-in-waiting were reporting her activities to Mary's council. She knew her letters were being intercepted and read. She knew every word she spoke might be used against her in treason trial. So she became extremely careful. She converted, outwardly, to Catholicism. She attended Mass. She denied any knowledge of Protestant plots even when accused. She survived partly through political intelligence and partly through assuming everyone was watching, which they were. But the watching destroyed something in her. When Elizabeth became queen, she never fully trusted anyone. She never married partly because marriage meant trusting someone with power over her, and she'd learned that trust was dangerous. She played courtiers against each other deliberately, ensuring no one became powerful enough to threaten her. She was suspicious of everyone around her for her entire life. The paranoia that kept her alive also prevented her from ever fully relaxing or connecting with anyone. That's the cost. Your mother's fate haunts every decision. If your mother was executed, beheaded, or died under suspicious circumstances, and many Tudor royal women did, that knowledge shapes every moment of your existence. Your mother was once powerful, protected, valuable. Then she wasn't. Then she was dead. The same could happen to you. You know this because you watched it happen. Or you were too young to remember watching, but everyone talks about it, whispers about it, uses it as cautionary tale. Your mother's execution is both your origin story and your nightmare. Princess Mary's mother, Catherine of Aragon, wasn't executed but was effectively destroyed. Catherine was queen, beloved, powerful. Then Henry VIII decided he wanted Anne Boleyn. Suddenly Catherine's marriage was declared invalid. She was stripped of title, separated from her daughter Mary, and sent away to live in increasingly poor conditions in isolated castles, while Henry married Anne and declared Mary illegitimate. Catherine died possibly of cancer, possibly of poison. The uncertainty is itself telling. Mary watched her mother be destroyed by her father for the crime of not producing a male heir. This shaped everything about Mary's personality and reign. She was paranoid about betrayal because she'd watched her father betray her mother. She was desperate for Catholic restoration because Protestantism was the religious justification for her mother's destruction. She was harsh toward anyone she perceived as disloyal because loyalty and betrayal had defined her entire childhood. The psychological damage was profound and permanent. That's what happens when you watch your mother be destroyed by politics you're powerless to affect. Princess Elizabeth's mother, Anne Boleyn, was executed when Elizabeth was not quite 3 years old. Elizabeth was old enough to remember having a mother and then suddenly not having one, but probably too young to understand why. Anne was accused of adultery, treason, incest, charges that were almost certainly fabricated. She was beheaded on Tower Green. Elizabeth grew up knowing her mother was executed for treason, knowing many people believed Anne was guilty, knowing her mother's death made her own legitimacy questionable. Elizabeth rarely mentioned her mother publicly. Was this shame, self-preservation, political calculation? Probably all three. Speaking about Anne Boleyn meant reminding people of the charges against her, the scandal, the execution. It meant being associated with treason and adultery, even though Elizabeth was an innocent child when it happened. So Elizabeth stayed quiet about her mother and learned to be careful, to be suspicious, to trust no one, because the woman who'd given birth to her had been destroyed by people she'd trusted. Lady Jane Grey's mother, Frances Brandon, wasn't executed, but Jane watched her mother essentially sell her for power. Frances forced Jane into marriage with Guilford Dudley as part of plot to put Jane on the throne. When the plot failed and Mary took power, Frances abandoned Jane to save herself. Jane was executed at 16. Her mother survived. That betrayal, mother prioritizing her own survival over her daughter's life, was perhaps as traumatic as execution itself. You learned that even your own mother might sacrifice you if the politics demand it. This maternal trauma creates hypervigilance. If your own mother can be destroyed, if your mother might betray you, if your mother's fate demonstrates how quickly power turns to vulnerability, then no one is safe and nothing is certain. You watch everyone because anyone could be the threat. You trust no one because trust has been repeatedly shown to be fatal. You calculate every decision based on worst-case scenarios because worst cases happen regularly to royal women who thought they were protected. The Tower looms, your potential destination. The Tower of London is always there in your awareness. Its royal palace, fortress, and prison simultaneously. Kings and queens live there sometimes. Traitors are held there before execution. Princesses are imprisoned there when they're suspected of treason. You might be sent there tomorrow. Your sister might be there now. Your mother might have died there. The Tower represents the place where royal status doesn't protect you anymore, where being princess means nothing except that you're valuable enough to imprison rather than simply killing. The Tower is where Anne Boleyn was held before her execution, where Lady Jane Grey was imprisoned and then beheaded, where Princess Elizabeth was held during Mary's reign when Mary suspected her of Protestant plotting, where anyone of royal blood who becomes inconvenient gets stored until someone decides what to do with them. It's not distant threat, it's practical reality that shapes how you live every day. You know what happens in the Tower because everyone talks about it. The interrogations where you're questioned for hours about your activities, your letters, your conversations, your beliefs. The torture. Officially, England doesn't torture highborn prisoners, but practices like sleep deprivation and psychological pressure are used. The waiting, sometimes for months, while your fate is decided by people you'll never see, debating whether you're too dangerous to keep alive. The execution, if it comes, is at least quick. The waiting beforehand is torment. Princess Elizabeth spent 2 months in the Tower during Mary's reign, accused of involvement in Wyatt's rebellion, Protestant uprising that wanted to put Elizabeth on the throne in place of Catholic Mary. Elizabeth probably didn't actively support the rebellion, but rebels used her name anyway. She was interrogated repeatedly. She denied everything. She pointed out that she'd been under house arrest before the rebellion and couldn't have coordinated with rebels she never communicated with. She was terrified. The Tower was where her mother had been executed, where others of royal blood had died, where she might die. Elizabeth survived because the evidence against her was circumstantial, and because Mary couldn't quite bring herself to execute her own sister without absolute proof of treason. But Elizabeth never forgot those 2 months. When she became queen, she was merciless toward anyone suspected of treason because she remembered being suspected herself. The Tower's shadow shaped her entire reign. That's what happens when you spend 2 months imprisoned waiting to discover if your sister will have you executed. Lady Jane Grey wasn't as lucky. She was imprisoned in the Tower after her 9-day reign ended and Mary took power. Jane was 16. She hadn't sought the crown. Protestant faction put her there. But seeking the crown or not didn't matter. She'd been proclaimed queen, which made her traitor once Mary was recognized. Jane spent months in the Tower, probably hoping for pardon. Mary initially seemed inclined to spare her. Then another rebellion used Jane's name, and Mary decided Jane was too dangerous to keep alive. Jane was beheaded on Tower Green. Her husband was executed the same day. Their crime was being used as pawns by adults pursuing power. Knowing the Tower exists, knowing you could be sent there for plots you didn't support or even know about, knowing that imprisonment might end in pardon or might end in execution, this creates constant low-level terror that you learn to live with. You become extremely careful about who you associate with, what you say, what you write in letters, because any of it could be used as evidence against you if someone decides you're a threat. The Tower is always there, waiting, and you're always aware that your royal blood makes you valuable enough to imprison rather than ignore. Marriage. Trap designed by strangers. Marriage negotiations fill you with dread that you can't express because being resistant to marriage makes you seem difficult, and difficult princesses don't get good matches, and not getting matched means you're unmarketable failure. So you smile when they discuss marrying you to foreign princes you've never met, and you pretend you're excited about prospects, and internally you're calculating which foreign country would be least terrible to be trapped in for the rest of your life. Marriage means being sent away to foreign country where you don't speak the language, don't understand the customs, don't have any allies. You'll be accompanied by a small English household initially, but they'll gradually be replaced by locals, cutting you off from anything familiar. You'll be expected to produce heirs, preferably male heirs, for dynasty you weren't born into. Your value to your new country is measured entirely by your fertility and your ability to avoid causing diplomatic problems. If you fail at either, your new country will hate you, and your birth country won't protect you because you're not their problem anymore. But refusing marriage isn't option. Unmarried princesses are useless from political perspective. Your purpose is creating alliances through strategic marriage. If you resist, you're failing at your only function. If you're too difficult, you might be married to someone even worse as punishment. The only power you have is maybe delaying things or expressing mild preference that might be ignored. You definitely don't get to refuse entirely. The negotiations themselves are degrading. Foreign ambassadors come to evaluate you. They assess your appearance. Are you pretty enough for their prince? They assess your health. Do you look fertile? Can you probably produce children? They ask about your education, your accomplishments, your religious beliefs. You perform for them like trained animal, demonstrating that you can speak their language, play music, dance, whatever skills make you more attractive commodity. They send reports back to their princes describing you in detail, so the prince can decide if you're acceptable. Sometimes portraits are sent instead of or in addition to personal visits. Artists paint you looking your absolute best. The portraits are somewhat flattering. Artists know better than to make royal subjects look worse than reality, but they have to be recognizable enough that the groom won't feel deceived when he actually meets you. Your face is literally inspected and judged by foreign men deciding whether you're pretty enough to marry. If they reject you based on your portrait, everyone knows you were considered insufficiently attractive. The humiliation is public. Princess Mary was betrothed to multiple foreign princes throughout her childhood and young adulthood. First to the French Dauphin when she was 2 years old. Negotiations fell through. Then to her cousin Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, when she was 16. He chose to marry someone else who brought better political advantages. Then to various other prospects over the years. Each betrothal was celebrated, then dissolved when political circumstances changed or when the proposed groom decided Mary wasn't valuable enough. By the time Mary actually married at age 37, she'd experienced decades of being evaluated, promised, and rejected. When Mary finally did marry, to Philip II of Spain, it was political disaster. The English people hated the Spanish marriage. They feared Spanish influence and Catholic dominance. Rebellions erupted protesting the match. Mary married Philip anyway because she was desperate for Catholic ally and desperately wanted children. Philip was 25, Mary was 37. Philip spent minimal time in England. Left after Mary's phantom pregnancies made it clear she probably couldn't provide heirs, and the marriage brought Mary none of the happiness or security she'd hoped for. The marriage she'd waited decades for was ultimately humiliating failure. The fear is that your marriage will be similarly disastrous. You'll be sent to foreign country where people hate you for being foreigner. Your husband will prefer his mistresses. You'll be blamed for not producing male heirs, even though sex determination is biological chance beyond your control. You'll live in isolation, surrounded by people who speak language you barely understand, serving country you weren't born into, trapped until death. That's what marriage offers, and refusing means social failure, so you smile and agree to whatever match is arranged and try not to think too much about what your life will actually be like. Religious danger, your faith could kill you. Religion isn't personal belief in Tudor England. It's political allegiance that determines who wants you alive and who wants you dead. England swings between Catholicism and Protestantism multiple times during Tudor period, and each swing creates new dangers. Your religious position, or what people believe about your religious position, marks you as loyal or traitorous. There's no neutral position. Every choice is dangerous. Under Henry VIII, the official position was Catholic doctrine with king as head of church instead of pope. Under Edward VI, England moved toward Protestantism. Under Mary V, Catholicism was restored and Protestants were burned. Under Elizabeth II, Protestantism returned and Catholics were executed. Your survival might depend on which religion you publicly profess, regardless of private beliefs. And professing wrong religion at wrong time means death. But here's what makes it psychologically torturous. You probably hold genuine religious beliefs formed by your education and upbringing. You're not just playing political game, you actually believe in whichever form of Christianity you were raised in. Being forced to conform to opposite faith for survival means betraying your own beliefs, which creates profound internal conflict. You're choosing between soul and survival. Some people chose soul and died for it. Others chose survival and lived with guilt. Neither choice was easy. Princess Mary was raised Catholic by her mother Catherine of Aragon. Her Catholic faith was central to her identity. During her brother Edward II's Protestant reign, Mary maintained Catholic Mass in her household despite pressure to conform to Protestant practices. She risked execution for this religious defiance. Mary survived partly because she was Edward's heir, and partly because she had powerful Catholic allies abroad, who might have invaded England if she'd been executed. But maintaining her faith under Protestant government meant years of stress, surveillance, and genuine danger. When Mary became queen, she reversed course with vengeance. She burned nearly 300 Protestants as heretics during her 5-year reign. This wasn't casual cruelty. Mary genuinely believed she was saving England's soul by eliminating heresy. Her Catholic faith, which had sustained her during years of persecution, became justification for persecuting others. The paranoid fear she'd lived with under Protestant government transformed into paranoid zeal as Catholic queen. The trauma shaped the tyranny. Princess Elizabeth faced opposite problem during Mary's reign. Elizabeth had been raised Protestant under Edward II's household. When Mary became queen and restored Catholicism, Elizabeth was under suspicion of Protestant loyalties. Elizabeth publicly conformed to Catholicism, attended Mass, made Catholic observances, denied Protestant sympathies. Whether this was genuine conversion or strategic survival is debated. Probably strategic survival. Elizabeth survived by being religiously flexible when necessary, which required suppressing her actual beliefs. When Elizabeth became queen, she established Protestant settlement, but was more moderate than some wanted. She'd learned that religious extremism created enemies. She'd seen her sister burn Protestants and become hated for it. So Elizabeth's approach was politically calculated compromise that tried to include as many people as possible while still being Protestant. Her religious flexibility wasn't from lack of conviction, it was from understanding that rigid conviction got people killed, potentially including herself. The religious paranoia extends to everyone around you. Which servants are Catholic? Which are Protestant? Who's reporting your religious observances to authorities? If you attend Mass during Protestant government, is someone noting that and filing it away as evidence of treason? If you read Protestant texts during Catholic government, is someone waiting to use that against you? Your private prayers aren't private. Servants watch, informants report, and your salvation might cost you your head. Beauty as surveillance. Your appearance is judged constantly. Your physical appearance is under constant assessment, which makes getting dressed each morning act of strategic calculation. Beautiful princesses are valuable in marriage market. Beautiful princesses attract attention and admiration that can be politically useful. But beauty also makes you threat to other women and target for men whose attention you don't want. There's no winning. You're judged if you're pretty, judged if you're not, and either way you're reduced to appearance before anyone considers what you think. The beauty routine itself is torture performed under surveillance. You don't dress yourself. Servants and ladies in waiting do it. They see your body, any physical flaws, any signs of illness or pregnancy. They help apply the lead-based white makeup that achieves fashionable pale complexion while slowly poisoning you. They pluck your hairline back to achieve high forehead. They dress you in layers of clothing that weigh many kilograms and restrict movement. The entire process takes hours and requires multiple people, which means multiple potential informants seeing you at your most vulnerable. The clothing itself is message you're sending whether you intend to or not. The fabrics, silk, velvet, cloth of gold, announce your status. The colors carry meaning. Purple is royal, black is mourning or Protestant simplicity. Red is associated with Catholicism. The cut of your gown, the style of your headdress, the amount of jewelry, all communicate information about your political position, your wealth, your current favor at court. You can't just wear what's comfortable or what you like. You wear what the situation demands, and if you get it wrong, you've made political statement you didn't intend. The white makeup deserves special mention because it's both beauty requirement and slowly progressive poisoning. The lead-based ceruse achieves fashionable pale skin that proves you don't work outdoors like peasants. But lead is toxic. Long-term use damages skin, causing scarring and discoloration that requires more makeup to cover, creating vicious cycle. It can cause lead poisoning, fatigue, pain, eventual death. Queen Elizabeth II's famous white-painted face was partly fashion and partly mask-hiding skin damaged by decades of ceruse use. Your beauty is constantly compared to other women's beauty. Who's prettier? Who attracted more attention at last banquet? Who received compliments? This competitive assessment pits you against other royal women in zero-sum game where someone's beauty gain is someone else's loss. If ambassador remarks that your sister is exceptionally beautiful, the implication is that you're less beautiful. If you're considered prettiest princess, other women resent you and might work against you out of jealousy. Either way, you lose. Princess Mary was described as pretty when young, but not exceptionally beautiful. This affected her marriage prospects. Some negotiations failed partly because proposed grooms weren't impressed by her portraits or descriptions. As Mary aged without marrying, her appearance became excuse for why she wasn't matched. Too old. Not attractive enough. Past childbearing. The rejection was personal, even though the politics were what actually drove most failed negotiations. Being judged on appearance when you have no control over how you were born is psychologically damaging and unavoidable. Your appearance also changes based on stress, illness, age. When you're under political pressure, you might lose weight or develop stress-related skin problems. When you're ill, you look ill, and people notice and speculate about what's wrong. When you age visibly, and people remark on it constantly. You can't hide physical decline or stress manifestations when you're never alone and always observed. Your body reveals things you prefer to keep private, and everyone watches and judges. Letters intercepted. Your words are evidence. Every letter you write might be read by people you didn't intend to read it. Every letter you receive might be intercepted before reaching you. Correspondence is both necessary, you can't maintain relationships or conduct any business without writing letters, and dangerous because written words are permanent evidence that can be used against you if someone wants to build treason case. You've developed strategies for letter writing that minimize risk, while still allowing some communication. You write innocuous letters about weather and health that reveal nothing. You use vague language that could be interpreted multiple ways. You avoid mentioning anything political or religious explicitly. You write assuming hostile readers even when writing to trusted correspondents. This makes genuine communication nearly impossible, but keeps you slightly safer from accusations based on your correspondence. But even safe letters can be interpreted dangerously if someone wants to find treason. A letter mentioning difficulties could be interpreted as criticism of current government. A letter expressing hope for better times could be interpreted as wishing for regime change. A letter to foreign correspondent could be interpreted as conspiracy with foreign powers. The words themselves might be innocent, but interpretation is controlled by whoever reads them, and they might read with intention to find guilt. Princess Elizabeth's correspondence during Mary's reign was scrutinized constantly. Elizabeth wrote very careful letters to Mary protesting loyalty, denying any involvement in Protestant plots, requesting permission for various minor matters. The letters were formulaic and cautious, because Elizabeth knew they'd be read by Mary's council, looking for evidence of treason. Even with extreme caution, Elizabeth was accused based partly on letters found among rebel conspirators that mentioned her name even though Elizabeth hadn't written them. You could be incriminated by letters other people wrote about you. Some correspondence requires codes or trusted messengers. If you absolutely must communicate something sensitive, you use cipher that presumably only your correspondent can decode. But ciphers can be broken. You use trusted messenger who'll memorize message and deliver it verbally rather than in writing. But messengers can be intercepted, tortured for information, or be traitors themselves. There's no completely secure communication method. Everything is risk calculation. The interception extends to domestic correspondence too. Letters to your ladies-in-waiting about household matters might be read to ensure you're not using household business as cover for something political. Letters to family members might be read to monitor your relationships and detect any coordination that authorities should know about. Even your most mundane correspondence is potentially surveillance data. You're never having private conversation in writing. This creates profound isolation. You can't express genuine feelings to anyone in writing because it's too risky. You can't maintain real relationships through correspondence because everything is filtered through extreme caution. You're surrounded by people but fundamentally alone because you can't trust anyone with actual thoughts. The letters you send are performances of normalcy, designed to prove you're not plotting anything. The letters you receive have been pre-screened and might be missing anything important. Your entire correspondence is theater for hostile audience. If you survive, the paranoia never leaves. Let's say you survive everything. Your mother's destruction, your fluctuating legitimacy, the religious persecutions, the succession crises, the constant surveillance, the marriage to stranger in foreign country, or the pressure to marry and eventual acceptance of spinsterhood. You survive to middle age, maybe even to old age. You're safe now, relatively. You have position, income, some security, but the paranoia never leaves. It can't. It's been survival mechanism for so long that it's part of your personality now, permanently embedded. You still watch everyone. You still assume letters might be intercepted. You still calculate what information you can safely share and what must be hidden. You still evaluate which servants might be spies. You still consider worst-case scenarios for every decision. The hypervigilance that kept you alive during dangerous years doesn't just turn off when danger lessens. It's who you are now. The psychological damage is permanent even when physical danger recedes. Queen Elizabeth I survived to age 69, extraordinary longevity for Tudor era. She became queen at 25 and ruled for 45 years. She was safe in her power, surrounded by guards and courtiers who mostly supported her. But she never stopped being paranoid. She never married because she couldn't trust anyone with that much power over her. She never named an heir until forced to on her deathbed because naming heir made that person threat to her. She played courtiers against each other deliberately to prevent any faction becoming strong enough to challenge her. She survived partly through intelligence and partly through never trusting anyone fully. Elizabeth's relationships were all transactional. Her courtiers competed for her favor, which she granted and withdrew strategically. Her advisors were valuable for their counsel, but she never relied on any single advisor too completely. Even Robert Dudley, whom she probably loved as much as she was capable of loving anyone, was never trusted with marriage or full power. Elizabeth died powerful but isolated, surrounded by people but fundamentally alone because she'd learned too young that trust was dangerous, and she never unlearned that lesson. Princess Mary, when she became queen, was similarly scarred by her traumatic youth. She trusted very few people: her Catholic advisors who'd supported her during Protestant reigns, her husband Philip, who didn't deserve trust and proved it by abandoning her, and very little else. She saw Protestant plots everywhere, some of which existed and some of which were probably paranoid imagining. She burned 300 Protestants partly from religious conviction and partly from fear of what they'd do to her if they gained power. She died at 42, possibly of cancer, possibly of other illness, having spent her reign fighting threats both real and imagined. The women who survived Tudor politics were the ones who learned to be paranoid effectively, suspicious enough to detect real dangers, careful enough to avoid traps, calculated enough to navigate the politics. But surviving required becoming the kind of person who couldn't fully relax, trust, or connect. The paranoia was adaptive response to real dangers, but the adaptation was psychological damage that never fully healed even when danger passed. Conclusion: justified fear in gilded cage. Being paranoid Tudor princess meant living with constant low-level terror that was completely justified by reality. Your mother might be executed, your legitimacy might change overnight, your religion might be treason, your letters might be intercepted, your servants might be spies. The tower waited for any misstep. Everyone around you wanted something from you or wanted to use you for their own purposes. Trust was dangerous. Relaxing was dangerous. The only safety was constant vigilance, and even that didn't guarantee survival. It just improved your odds. This wasn't mental illness. This was rational response to genuinely threatening environment. The dangers you feared were real. People really were watching you. Plots really existed. Princesses really were executed, imprisoned or destroyed by the same political systems that had previously protected them. Your paranoia wasn't irrational anxiety. It was appropriate recognition of actual dangers that could kill you if you weren't careful enough. But living with that level of fear and suspicion for years or decades damages you psychologically in ways that can't be undone. You become unable to trust even when trust might be safe. You see threats everywhere, some real and some imagined, and you can't always distinguish between them. You sacrifice genuine human connection for safety. You survive, but at cost of becoming someone who can never fully relax, never fully connect, never fully live without fear. That's the price of survival in an environment where trust can be fatal. The prettiest prisons are still prisons. The most justified paranoia is still psychologically destructive. Tudor princesses lived in golden cage where everyone wanted to use them, where family could betray them, where royal blood was no protection from execution if you became politically inconvenient. Being paranoid was rational. Being constantly afraid was appropriate. Trusting no one was survival strategy. But none of that made it less damaging to live that way year after year after year. If you enjoyed this look at Tudor princess life through lens of justified paranoia, the surveillance, the dangers, the rational fear, and the psychological cost of constant vigilance, subscribe for more historical deep dives that show royal life as it actually was, not as fairy tales pretend it was. Being paranoid Tudor princess meant being right to fear everything, but unable to do anything about most threats. The crown was lovely, but it marked you as target. The privilege was enormous, but it came with danger that never stopped. You watched everyone, trusted no one, and survived by never relaxing for a single moment. That's not paranoia, that's Tuesday in Tudor England, and it never ever stopped.